I'm going to insert myself in here. So do you want us to bring up the PowerPoint? Do you want to bring up the PowerPoint and get ready before we're at 3:57? We'll start right at 4.
Okay.
So before 4 o'clock, if Abby and Chong Bin, if you could go ahead and mute and turn your cameras off, then we'll be
Okay.
with the PowerPoint up, we'll be ready to actually broadcast at 4. Now I really will disappear. As we are 1 minute to the hour, I wanted to confirm that Abby, you want to be on camera because you are. If not, right before 4, you should probably turn your camera off.
Oh, and then Sarah is gonna kick it off, right?
Yeah, she's basically doing the intro slides, what's in the museum, what's coming up, all that.
Perfect.
Welcome, everyone. We're letting a few people file in. I want to say hi to everyone and that we are thrilled to be able to host the next installment of our Art Escapes program. The topic of this lecture is Contemporary Art Anew. My name is Sarah, and I will be hosting this event with you. We have the honor of being joined by Abby Chen, and we have a special guest today, one of the artists, Chong Bin, who will be answering questions at the end of our virtual tour with our curator. While we have more guests joining and settling in, we would like to use this time to give a quick overview of the flow of the event and highlight upcoming programs and exhibitions at the museum. We'll have a greeting and introduction, followed by the video tour. During the video, please feel free to ask questions in the Q&A box, but you'll have time to ask them at the end of the video as well. And once we've asked those questions, we'll be able to talk with Abby and our artists and get those questions answered. Before we begin, we would like to acknowledge that the land on which we are gathered is the ancestral home of the Ohlone peoples, who stewarded this land for generations. We pay respect to the elders, past, present, and emerging, for they hold the memories, traditions, and culture of their people across the nation. We extend our respect to the Ohlone Ramaytush, coastal Miwok, as well as other indigenous people who are present. And if you attended our previous Art Escapes program, you might already know the flow of our program and the tools we use. The chat feature allows you to make comments throughout the program, and the Q&A feature is what you will have to submit your questions. So let's do a quick practice. Respond in the chat to what is your favorite springtime activity? There are no right or wrong answers. This is just a fun way for us to get used to the controls as we let more people join. And I'll give you guys some time to answer so I can see what you guys are saying. Ooh, replanting all my house plants, long evening walks. Walks in nature. I'm seeing a lot of exercise enthusiasts here. And I personally, my answer was going to be that I'm so excited that the weather is warming up and that we have more light in each day, because I really love hiking in the Bay Area and getting to do a little bit of amateur bird watching. Okay, and let us keep going. And so we're so excited that things are opening back up. That's a kind of my favorite part of spring, is that we were able to reopen on March 4th. So you're able to come visit the museum now. Our hours of operation are Thursday from 1 to 8, and Friday through Monday, we're open at 10 in the morning until 5 p.m. Time tickets are available on the website, and we have free general admission on the first Sunday of every month. And so the next one is coming up. So I hope you guys will be able to join us. If you're wondering what's new at the museum, here's a little peek at a few of the new exhibitions on view. You may recognize these images again, as we'll be focusing on some of these pieces and more in our upcoming video. And if you're interested in any of these upcoming exhibitions, or you're looking forward to some of the events that we have, I would like to give a quick shout out to membership. Becoming a member of the museum has fantastic benefits, including unlimited free admission, which includes tickets to special exhibitions and the exhibits that you're seeing on the screen. You'll also get invitations to member-only previews and events, and access to the virtual member lounge, discounts at the museum boutique, and a subscription to our members magazine, as well as access to other events like this one. And so now I've spoken a lot about the museum, so I'd like to take some time to introduce myself. I'm the supervisor of guest experience and group sales at the Asian Art Museum. The guest experience team works closely with a lot of different departments, but you'll find me supporting all aspects of ticket sales, working with the volunteer coordinator to manage the information desk and concierge station. And our department does a lot of work with docents, and we manage private tours and group visits. We're also focused on making the museum really be for everyone, so we work really hard to facilitate and improve accessibility resources. And now that you know more of my role, I'm happy to introduce Abby. She is our Senior Associate Curator and Head of Contemporary Art. A long-time advocate on arts autonomy and telling untold stories, her focus on bringing art from and into marginalized communities broke barriers imposed on ethnic institutions and neighborhoods. Prior to taking on this position in 2019, she served for a decade as the curator and artistic director at the Chinese Cultural Center and Foundation of San Francisco. Multiple initiatives were established during her tenure, including Xian Ru, Fresh Art, which is a Artist Excellence Series since 2008, which was the first of its kind in the country supporting mid-career artists of Chinese descent in America. In 2010, she organized Gender Identity Symposium, which is a multi-city forum in, Abby might need to help me with this pronunciation, but Guangzhou, Beijing, Shanghai, followed by the 2011 International Exhibition Woman on Feminism, Gender Equality, and Social Engagement in China. So we're very thrilled to be able to have this with her, and we're really looking forward to being able to discuss the video with her. And here she is.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Well, on such a beautiful day in the San Francisco Bay Area, I'm very grateful that our participants are coming over to see what is happening in the museum. And with the sunshine outside, let's also not forget that there's this surging violence against Asian Americans in this country and against Asian community around the world. And I cannot emphasize in a moment like this, the importance of us coming together, and also the role of the museum is really to foster this understanding of Asian and Asian American culture. We celebrate the Asian Americans' achievements in this country and also recognize the struggles that come with it. And without further ado, we have prepared this series of introduction to the exhibition and the projects that we have in the museum. And this is 2 years in the making, if not more. During the pandemic, we are now able to open, but the museum just reopened recently, and now we're operating at 50% capacity. And there's nothing can really beat the real thing. I welcome you back to the museum. And again, this is the role the museum can play: foster understanding and recognize these important cultural productions by the Asian and Asian American culture workers. So I would like to ask my colleague Ted to roll the video and to start the introduction of what we have prepared for all our visitors. And while Ted is preparing for the video, I also want to share with you that the museum is open on Monday, Monday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We're closed on Tuesday and Wednesday. So book your tickets online, reserve your spot, and I'll see you in the museum. Hello, everyone. My name's Abby Chen. I'm the head of Contemporary Art Department at the Asian Art Museum. Today, I would like to show you some of my favorite contemporary artwork in the museum. These contemporary artwork demonstrates a transformed vision of the museum that connects with public life and bring the world into the museum. Situated in the Civic Center and Tenderloin district of San Francisco, the museum is part of a diverse community. In a time of unprecedented events and uncertainty, we look to art and artists for a sense of belonging, freedom, and connection. These installations and exhibitions stand as our collective love letter to our city, bringing the museum out into the streets and the street into the museum. We will start with the mural "Don't Mess With Me" by Sharon Jiva, located on the East-West Bank Art Terrace and viewable from the streets below. Sharon Jiva is a street artist based in Mumbai who designed this image, popularly known as the Pink Lady, which depicts an Indian woman with a raised fist, brandishing brass knuckles that spell out the word "boom." The Pink Lady first appeared on the streets of Mumbai in response to several men charged in a high-profile gang rape case in Delhi in 2012. Sharon Jiva, who was raised in Northern California and was influenced by San Francisco's Mission District murals and the city's punk and skateboarder scene, now brings the Pink Lady to the Bay Area to watch over us on High Street and McAllister Street, giving the people below a sense of safety, a sense of protection, and a message to our stand in fighting against gendered violence.
Here in Wilbur Gallery, located inside the new pavilion, we have Chanel Miller's mural, I Was, I Am, I Will Be. The work faces out towards High Street and is visible at all hours since the gallery is lit up at night. Chanel Miller is an artist and writer, as well as the author of the 2019 memoir, Know My Name, in which she details her experience as the victim of a Stanford University sexual assault case and her process of recovering from this trauma. In I Was, I Am, I Will Be, Miller illustrates written affirmations with playful cartoon figures to represent healing as a process of three interconnected parts: reflecting on the past, being mindful in the present, and envisioning the future. This mural is like a beacon of light and a symbol of resilience. And now with COVID, we need it more than ever. Here's the Lawrence and Gradilloy High Street art wall, a new 7 by 30 foot site for art on the exterior wall of the new pavilion, which will host an ongoing series of commissioned public artworks. Currently viewable on High Street, we have Pattern Recognition by Jennifer K. Wofford, a Filipino-American artist based in San Francisco, who made this mural honoring 9 historically important American artists of Asian descent who were active in the Bay Area. Pattern Recognition's comic book style speech bubbles pop up from a colorful background to shout out names such as Russo Sawa, Bernice Bing, and Carlos Villa. Many of these artists are significant in their work, but have been ignored and excluded from mainstream American art history. Wofford celebrates them with pattern drawn from these artists' practices, intertwined with pattern drawn from the museum collection, particularly emphasizing objects that represents the Southeast Asian community that live in the surrounding Civic Center and Tenderloin neighborhoods. These patterns are like a secret code that provides a refreshing familiarity that connects the community to the museum and vice versa. Stepping inside of the museum, in Johnson's S. Bogart Court, the north wing of the museum right next to the main entrance, is the transformed lobby, featuring numerous contemporary art installations and exhibitions. One of these is the exhibition I Look for the Sky, featuring the Bay Area-based artist Jung, consisting of 2 site-specific commissions that manipulates light and space. The underutilized space of Bogart Court is now activated with Jung Chongbin's site-specific installation, I Look for the Sky, which lends its name to the exhibition. The installation is a methodically engineered structure mounted with an array of staggered panels that vary in transparency and pattern. The layered acrylic and optical film sheets filter, warp, and refract the light from overhead, creating a perceptual experience that varies depending on our own bodily movement and where we're positioned. Jung Chongbin conceptualized this work with the awareness of the 2020 election, as well as the museum-wide vision of connecting the outside of the museum to its inside. The work is also inspired by architect Gay Alante's original design of this court, resulting from the 2003 expansion of this building, which emphasized transparency and light. Zheng Chongbin also applies the influence of the California light and space movement to this work to sculpt the light, resulting in a moving painting that draws from his earlier practice primarily in abstract ink painting. As our visitors come into the museum and experience this unique installation, their bodily encounter will provide a new angle and sense of access into the traditional and historical ink paintings on display in other areas of the museum. As we walk into Osher Gallery, the second part of the I Look for the Sky exhibition is made visible with its multisensory installation titled State of Oscillation that takes up the entire gallery. Its center consists of a chamber made from scrim, inside which distorted videos from several projectors and ambient noise from a speaker immerse us in light and sound. The projection also emanate out and illuminate various objects installed outside the chamber, including concept drawings and abstract ink painting. If I Look for the Sky reimagines how our body encounters the outside world, State of Oscillation reflects how we perceive an internalized world and inner self. Hambrick Contemporary Gallery was recently rededicated to exhibiting contemporary artwork from the museum collection. In our inaugural collection rotation, Memento, we're showcasing two large-scale iconic work from two artists, Jaishri Chakravarti and Lan Dongpang, that explore urban spatial politics through the lens of memory and time. These works were created at a critical juncture of the artist's practices, and we are the first museum in North America to have acquired the work by these two artists. A Day of Two Suns, 2019, by Lan Dongpang, depicts a rapidly changing Hong Kong, creating a landscape that reflects the outside world, but is filtered through his inner world. The work consists of an ensemble of plywood mountain sculptures and found objects staged around a large paper screen, upon which looping videos are projected on either side. These assemblages of faded, seemingly still videos, which depict panoramic sites in Hong Kong, reflect Lan Dongpang's memory and longing of his homeland. Our bodies cast shadows upon the screen, as do the assorted objects, obscuring these memories and evoking a scattered recollection of the disappearing past. An artist with extensive training in both Chinese landscape painting and contemporary art, Lam translates the material and motif from different genres into an interactive installation work that allows the audience to immerse themselves into this world he creates. Next to this piece is Jaishri Chakravarti's personal space, which represents almost the reverse of what Lam portrays. Personal space turns the rapidly changing region of Calcutta into a large map of Chakravarti's memories and the terrain of her mind. Created by layering paper, fabric, and paint, this two-sided paper structure is decorated with images, patterns, and textures that evoke cartography and natural and urban landscapes. These reflect her upbringing in the lush countryside outside of the city of Calcutta, as well as her anxiety seeing this natural environment destroyed by the rapid spread of urbanization. As we navigate the work, personal space seems to encircle our bodies and immerse us in its own private dimension. A Day of Two Suns 2019 and personal space represent the values and breadth of our developing contemporary art collection. Memento is only the beginning of our curatorial vision for this part of the collection, a vision centered on innovation and creative survival. Please come visit our museum and enjoy the city of San Francisco. Whether you experience the museum from the outside or the inside, we hope that the contemporary art can provide you a source of strength, inspiration, and possibility.
Sarah, you're muted.
Thank you. That was wonderful.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. And I hope our audience enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, so please put questions in the Q&A for either Abby or our artist. And it looks like we already have one. And this one is from Jim Brown to Abby. What specific aspect of Zhang Chongbin's art persuaded you to select his work to occupy a premier location of the Asian Art Museum's transformation project? And so why did you choose that to have that be in our space?
Wow, that's a great question, Jim. Later on, I can have Chongbin to chime in as well. But as a curator, when I first look at museum, its own architecture, actually for every museum, when we talk about the collection, the architecture is part of the collection. And how do we work with an artist to activate this really very visible space, but underutilized space? It's a tough one because indoor of, for the museum, when you work with an indoor space, there's a lot of restrictions, building code, weight issues, and also thinking about the traffic. And of course, there are lots of amazing artists out there. And when we look at, the artist connection with our existing collection, and also the artist's capacity in working with a space, and also their own artistic development, as well as their connection with the Bay Area. So lots of factors were considered when we're thinking about what kind of the art piece. And when I invited Zhang Chongbin, not only that in the past 10 years, he has demonstrated the amazing ability of working with a lot of very challenging space, such as the oldest Zen temple in Kyoto, or at the Shanghai Biennial, by completely transforming a large indoor space. So when I invited him, of course, one of the things is that we need to make sure that Zhang Chongbin is also very aware of our own architectural history of this building, which was the expansion in the 2000 was done by the renowned architect Gaël Lante, and who also transformed the train station in France. So when Gaël Lante was envisioning this expanded museum from the Central Library, one of the things that she said was, I want to let the light in. And then for Zhang Chongbin, whose work originally is this abstract ink painting, and to rethink about what light does to the space. So with Gaël Lante introduce light into the museum, it's really up to the artist to sculpt the light. And so that became the major theme on how Zheng Chongbin was envisioning the space, as well as how the influence of California's light and space movement has helped shaped his vision. So, and the museum was also the first institution that collect his ink painting work. So as we're seeing this, I Look for the Sky installation work, we can also see how the abstract ink painting got deconstructed into this materiality with the scrim, with the panels, and the light become the water that diffuse on this panel, almost like the shrimp paper. The bodily invitation on how people will experience this piece is very connected with his ink painting practice. So, I mean, of course, I can talk about this forever, but that is kind of like a short answer to a very complex project to Jim's question. And I'm sure later on we can invite Chongbin to say a few words as well. Yeah, so that will be a short answer. Yeah.
And is part of that process of experiencing and playing with light and the installation was we're open late on Thursday evenings, and is that quality of light sort of the golden hour and the evening light and even the darkness, the absence of light, is that a part of the installation as well?
Absolutely. There are lots of factors when we're thinking about how to install this piece, and of course, when Chongbin was envisioning the piece, and this idea of which is our director Jaishri's vision, is turning the museum inside out, how the museum is connected to the public life, to the outside world. So when Zheng Chongbin was envisioning this piece, the importance of also knowing that 2020 was the year that we're installing it, I think there's a lot of anxiety about the election. We are looking for hope. We are looking beyond whatever our physical constraints are. So that piece, in so many ways, metaphorically, was talking about that too, is how we sculpt that light and go through all of these, whether we can call it blockage or I would say complexities, and we still see light in different ways. And it's very connected to how we move as our own personal action. So that part is one part, but thinking about that light changes throughout the day, from the morning, as you said, to the evening as well. And there's not necessarily a particular golden hour, but every hour is different. And Zheng Chongbin has been sitting like day after day in that lobby and just to observe how the light changes. And very interestingly, one of the things we noticed is that by the evening time, when the outside natural light was gone, our internal lights turned on, and this entire space looks like golden. So the golden hour actually comes at the darkest time. So which is a very interesting metaphor again. So I certainly will encourage our visitors to come in multiple times, come to experience the piece in daytime, in a day that is cloudy, in a day is really blue, and you will see that glare of blue going through the panel, and come on a Thursday late when we have all our internal lights on, and see that golden quality of what this panel could do. It's really magical.
Yeah, it's definitely been a joy to be able to be on site and to be able to every day that I'm here be able to look up and just be sort of awestruck by that piece, because it really is something sensational that you get to see in person, because every step that you take, it changes, and it changes with you, and it feels like you're definitely a part of that piece, and I really love it. And we have another question, and something that I always ask as well is, there's so many artists in the world, and so many contemporary artists in San Francisco and the Bay Area. How do you choose these artists? How do you build, do you build bonds with them? Have you known them in the past? And how are these particular artists chosen? I've always wondered. I feel like I wouldn't know how to pick.
I wouldn't either, because we got so many. And especially, I mean, talking about California, especially Bay Area, we are really a breeding ground for so many important American artists. And many of these American artists, they're also Asian. And so it's very important for us to remember that the Asian American art has existed the moment that Asians set foot on, to this land. And but very often they are not widely celebrated for the obvious reason that they are the minority. So that it's long due, I think, for museum to celebrate their achievements, from Obata to Russo-sawa, and to a lot of names that they should be household names, but they are so under-recognized. Bernice Bing, Kei Sakimachi, Leo Valador, Carlos Villa. I mean, I can go on with that list. But at the same time, while we're playing catch up, but it's not just Asian Art Museum that need to honor these artists. I think all museums need to honor these amazing American artists. And then at the same time, instead of also playing catch up, we should also capture all these young artists, emerging artists, while they are producing amazing work, while they're growing. And it's not just Asian Art Museum's responsibility. I would like to invite the entire public to recognize that and come to see their art, collect their work, talk about their work. If you are a journalist, if you have a social media account, share with us that experience that you'll encounter these artists' work. If we don't talk about them, who will, right? If it's not now, then when? So I would like to say there's so many amazing artists, and we all need to do our share so that not one institution, not one organization bear the responsibility to showcase them. And of course, we're very lucky that we are a space that we can also offer a lot of agency and autonomy to these Asian American artists and Asian artists. But then at the same time, we really need more institutions to step up and do the same.
And in light of the media highlighting the tragedies of our community, what do you think that an artist's role is and the museum's role is as we're on the forefront of social justice and we're a part of the community? So what do you think, how can the museum use its space to help people in the community, and what is the role of the museum in that capacity?
Wow, Sarah. That is a very heavy, important, and very urgent question for all our museum workers, curators, artists involved, the culture workers, I would say, in general. In a recent interview I had with Hyperallergic, I talked about how do we see museums' role. And a museum's role, the museum play an important and critical role on influencing the culture. And then now that I have been working with the museum for more than 2 years now, I think one of the things I feel very deeply committed to is that how can we translate and transfer the expertise and commitment of the museum's care of the collection, which is made of objects, to the human being and the issues that human beings care about. And so it's really important for us to think about museum not only as a space for care of object, but care of being, care of human lives, care of lives, and what kind of factors that are influencing their lives. So, and I think that is a common goal. That's a collective vision that cannot be taken on by the museum alone. And again, I cannot emphasize the importance of this commitment need to be taken on by all the museums, not just Asian Art Museum that has a characteristic that associated with ethnicity. Because as the Asian Art Museum, of course, it's very important for us to be on the front line to talk about these issues. But then on the other hand, as you saw, a lot of these artwork that we put up, Chanel Miller, Sharon Jiva, Jennifer Wofford, they are all talking about the importance of fighting gender violence, the importance of right the wrong from the art history, recognizing these American artists. So I think that part, Asian Art Museum not only cannot be the only museum that does that, but then at the same time that the Asian Art Museum should not be tokenized and be the scapegoat and being put on this platform and frontline to be the only museum that is doing this. So we need to be very careful that we should not be tokenized while that we're doing all of this work. And we really need more other museums to join us. And meanwhile, that our work that need to be recognized.
And I think definitely this can tie into some of the questions that we've received when, of course, there's a responsibility of representation, but when we have all of these different pieces, is there an element, like how do we decide the theme of what we're going to do? Because we have a lot of similar themes and concepts in what we've had on display. And so when you pick artists and when you pick things to put on view, do you go with like a theme for everything, or are they a little bit more disjointed, or do you prefer to have a lot of different concepts, or do you prefer more of a unified theme?
I think they work kind of in tandem. Sometimes, and again, I feel like, first of all, artists should have the autonomy to create whatever that they like, whether it's responding to the current moment, or that they just have this kind of impulse and inspiration to create whatever. And then as an institution, one of the things when we think about this transformation and the contemporary art in the Asian Art Museum, the idea of connecting the museum to the public life, the idea of the museum connecting to its own city, its own Bay Area, and also its own history was actually the central theme. So whether it's super emerging artists like Chanel Miller, or I would say established artists like Ai Weiwei, or like the mid-career artists like Jung, our goals are actually very unified and the same, is like amplifying these unheard voices, giving them a bigger platform that they did not have before, and that we as a Asian Art Museum, what is our role in amplifying and recognizing these talents in our own neighborhood, as well as far out there that also have a strong voice that should be heard and emphasized over and over again. So, the work in Memento, Jaishri Chakravarti, who is based in Calcutta, and Lan Dongpeng, who is based in Hong Kong, their work often are not being recognized or even known in this country, let alone the rest of the world outside of Asia. So again, for us being the first institution in North America to recognize their work, to bring their work into United States and share it with our Bay Area and the museum field is very important. It's true that we are not constantly showing the work that were household names. There are, but I think an important strategy is to show them side by side. So that is not all about these world famous artists, but the artists that really deserve a lot more attention, a lot more recognition that could be featured by us as well. So we are proud to say that we also play a very important role in their career when they're growing.
And I know we did just open, these exhibitions have just begun. They're brand new, but we have a question. I'm sorry, I almost misread that. Can you talk about any upcoming contemporary pieces or art that we can look forward to?
Well, just now, I think the video showed that. So definitely come to see these artwork. Many of them are newly commissioned work. So you will see that first in San Francisco. They're made in San Francisco, fresh and hot. And so I would say definitely check these out too. And we have a lot of other exciting work in the pipeline as well. And while that, I know I have been talking, and I know that we have artist Jung Chongbin with us, and there's a lot of questions actually were about his work. So I wonder if we can invite Chongbin to the screen and quickly have him talking about the work. So Chongbin, if you're online, yeah, let us know. Yeah.
I'm in right now. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome, welcome. We're so happy that you're able to be here with us. So can you tell us a little bit about what has inspired you in your life, and anything that you would like to discuss about what has brought you to this moment and some of your inspirations?
Yeah, and actually I was thinking, I mean, Abby made a lot of great points, and I think is each of those points actually we could actually go on. The one of the point people asking why you work with those artists, I think it's not at the moment why I work with those artists. I think it's just through the time, and my experience that I live in this country, and I became a citizen in 1996, and over half the time living here in California, and before was in China. So there is a lot of the mixtures, and so the experience and the also what I going through my careers in each different times. So I guess the development of the work that I always felt that I'm not really actually sitting still. I'm always on the move, meaning that I always touch on the various places and then working on different sort of your living path in a way, but that certainly reflected the whole society in different time, a different period of time. So, she mentioned about the work that light space work I did in Shanghai and did in the Kyoto, and also did in the Houston's or did in here. So it all has its own reason, an emphasis, and also the how language evolved, and this is the kind of in the whole totality of this whole development, not just on a singular project, and so that to this is also has specific learning process and interactive process with the actual Asian Art Museum site,
And Abby mentioned that you've done a wide range of installations, and that some of them were more difficult spaces. And do you prefer kind of a challenge? Do you like it if a space is a little bit smaller, or you have to work more closely with it? Or what do you like about picking or getting to work with a space?
I actually I don't have much of choices of what space that I wanted to select, because either being proposed or there's only a place that it's a setting there, which is I found somewhat kind of boring, that I'm thinking it's just a white box, because often you really have to break the norm. Not that you want to intentionally, it's just like what the reason drives you to do that. And then always you try to find a way, transform something, the entity or things from nothing to something. And so often that like the one that I did in the Shanghai Biennale one, the previous model was in Beijing in the gallery in the ink studio. So I was dealing with the lights from the one side of the wall, but quickly it does sort of expand it to the idea of how we, based on what I actually, since it is in China. And so it was about not only the traditional media, how it can become the touch on a lot of the issue in terms of we're dealing with natures and the self. So we are the part of sort of the what's that? We're part of the kind of emergence materials, and that we have agency of the materials as human bodies, and how we view the natures based on the idea of liberate yourself in the mind, in terms of working within a Taoist idea of dealing with the natures and being freely engaged with it. At the same time, very interested to bring the phenomenologies of your body experience and actually to create a space and use a space and giving a whole new experience of this situation that the people and they're not really in the very static experience, but they're in the living experience when they are entering into the space, the art space. And the Shanghai Biennale certainly is one to fit in the theme, because they want to open the space, not to be enclosed, but it's the view can be introduced, engage both inside and outside. So, and the Kyoto one is, it's more different cases because of the nature surrounding with the gardens. And I also been back and forth, study the site, a lot of environmental issues. You remember was huge typhoon seasons, which is actually destroy a lot of gardens and natures. And so how the gardens, each gardens monks adapt a way of nurturing the gardens, rebuilt, and all these idea that I see the season evolve. And so that sort of really give me the idea of how to tie these threads and all the entity together, both the change of the natures, and then how the architectural setting in the Zen Buddhist gardens, the space architectures, and how the people meditate, how people coming in to regain the experience. And so all these actually, when I was sitting, Abby asked me to do this at the North Court and Bogart Court, and I have no idea, because I do feel that all these spaces are very challenging, because there is so much elements. So you kind of wanted to see things that where it's what is the actual invisible important sort of the invisible entity that you really wanted to sort of bring that into your realizations. And so I always feel that it was incredible light is coming in from space, like mentioned Gail Delantes, the idea of bring outside lights in, but it's the architectural, it's the structural. And so I believe it's always the fluidities and fluxes of the movement. And so it's some way also the material that I use is I always want to use more organic. And so because we're not sitting in one place, we kind of connect the threads. So this is the whole idea of whether I'm doing the paintings, it always facilitates, and you kind of became material becomes manifested to you. So it's kind of this exchangeabilities of that. And so seeing the space to decide how do I interact with the lights and bring light into the tangible sense, and how it interact with your own sort of sense of movement. It really fits the idea of this, the flexus of the world. And so, just from the beginning when I was studying the space and been thinking about it, and through the whole process over like a year and a half, and just how we were talking about the titles about I Look for the Sky, and how much of uncertainties and how much of anxieties we went through. So I remember even when we installed the pieces, and all the my team or the museum team every 5 minutes had to check on the phone just to see what's the news coming and doing the elections. And so, but I think that it's a really to me is that to working on this, the light space work is kind of it's really tied, whether between human, non-human, or whether past or tradition or history or to the audience. It's really the threads of communication. So they all sort of in this it's object, object sort of reflected on this entire the dynamics and in the time and space. And then mentioned to in the evenings, which I don't. It's because we wanted to open watch of the daylight, and I know it's going to be the daylight. And winter is always going to be day ended earlier with the light, but a lot of time the way I work on those pieces, you will only leave about. You only can work towards 60-70% and leave the rest to the piece itself, whether you develop the concept or whether the finish will work. And then this is sort of coming as really, kind of a nice surprise. I remember was when finished installing and then would turn on the lights because, by 5 o'clock it's already complete dark. So really hard to see the layer of the work and doing all these adjustments. And so when the lights turns on, actually this complete have different spectrum of light, and then how material interact with different sets of light. So again, it's really opening to various different possibilities. And of course now move towards the summer, and so day is much longer. So but I think is like Abby said, I think is a different time of the days, and the piece really living, breathing very differently. And I can also kind of really enjoy in a way that spending hours and during the days and seeing how it changes and how light shifts. And that's always a major part of the component in terms of dealing with the how designed pieces and how that we set in orientations and how it reacted with the to me the idea we're dealing with the cosmos, the natures as a whole from the pieces.
And that's definitely a joyful part of my day is at 8 in the morning, I come in and I look up because it's on my way to work in the office. And then when I'm leaving in the evening around 5:30 or 6, I'll look up again. And it's just it's the same, but it's different. It's definitely a joy to be able to experience it at different times. So we have another question. Who are some of the contemporary installation artists that have influenced your work?
Well, it's it is kind of no, it's very hard to say. I mean, I think living in California, certainly light space, that whole concept it really is heavily influenced me in terms of the because I live in the Marin and I like the natures. I go hiking a lot, like you just mentioned about the hiking, and so the light is so different. And I travel around different places, and I always see how the architectures interact with the light. Like Louis Kahn said, when he sees light, he's actually create a shadow. He's actually sculpting the shadows for the light. And I, go to the different historical site and the places. It's especially the place, for example, I go to the Cistercian abbeys in many different sites in France, and those are 13th centuries. The monastery has a pure architectures in dealing with the sound and the light. It's an incredible transcendent experience, and you can actually see the actually real light became the real touchable sense in terms of not only physically, but it's a really transcend your perceptual experience. And so the artist I really liked in like the Robert Irwin's, and he is certainly looking at him. He is really his ideas coming from phenomenologies and Husserl's, and he's always talking about. And so but what I like about him is he's actually working from nothing to something. So often has it effortlessly, in a way, it's very light, very less touching on the what existing, but in the way that he actually facilitated that what he sees that you don't see, and giving the entire experience. And with all the then there's with all the light space movement artists in the 70s, and whether Larry Bell's working on an object basis oriented, or Terrell is in between to me. And so sometimes Terrell's working in design the light and became form of the shape, but sometimes he really opens up the form. And so the way how they think about the make that the object disappears, and really sort of break the boundaries actually between the object and also your own experience in that, I think is really inspires me. And I work in a work, of course, that I actually also think is very important. I do think is the way seeing that what my own practice, it's not only because of dealing with your conscious or phenomenology, but I think is also material, non-human part of it. So they also co-independent from us. You go through, see the ecologies, see it in the natures, its own way of unfolding, own way of how they're restructuring. And I often saying, like, you know, we have a very strong connection to the non-human world. So I always want to emphasize how the material has its own way of performing, its own way of coming into life. And that often sometimes we need really to bring that, bring that kind of the visual idea, visual transformations into the real kind of experience. So to me, it's you know, my other side of ideas coming from my painting practice, from the how the ink media, how dealing with the liquid, and how things flow, and all these are part of the my integrations with my light space work.
I mean, that's fascinating. I thank you so much for sharing that with us. I really feel like that's given me so much insight, and I hope it has for everyone else into your work and your inspirations. And thank you so much. I think with that, I think we're that's sort of our time. Unless anyone if you guys would like to have like a final comment or anything that you were hoping to say. I would just like to say that I'd like to emphasize that being able to see these works in person make you feel so connected to the museum and the art. And it's difficult to express the sense of awe that you get from these pieces. And I would just love to encourage anyone who can to come into the museum, because these pieces really, they move with you, they change with you. they really make you feel like you're not just visiting the art, that the art is interacting with you, because every step that you take, you see something different, you get a different perspective, and the murals are so powerful and our installations are just so wonderful. I would definitely want to encourage anyone who can to come into the museum and come a bunch, get a membership, come a bunch, so you can see the pieces at different times and just get to experience that. It really, I'm so happy that when we were able to reopen with these specific pieces, because I personally felt such a strong connection with them, and that they're just wonderful. You guys have to come see them. And I just want to thank Abby and Zhang so much for being here. And we really appreciate you taking the time to do this with us. It's so wonderful that we get to do these programs. And I want to thank the audience, because without you, we wouldn't have this. We're so happy that you guys want to engage with us and ask the artists and the curators questions. And I want to thank everyone behind the scenes as well. We have our wonderful support team and our AV team. They really do a lot of work to make this happen, and the people who make the videos. And yeah, thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope you'll come to the museum and see these works. And please join us for our next Art Escapes tour. That is on April 10th. And I'm really excited about that one as well. So thank you guys so much for being here. Thank you for everyone who asked questions. And we hope to see you in person and virtually soon.
And also the museum not only have contemporary art, we have amazing artwork from different time in history, the work of archaeology, and it's a great, great feast. And also I want to thank Sarah and Nicole and John, Ted, Scott for organizing today's event. It's been a great pleasure to talk to our visitor directly and hear from them. And also want to thank Chong for joining us. And lastly, I just want to give a shout out to my team, Viv Liu and Megan Mary. They have been working very, very hard with me on these massive kind of transformation projects. So I just want to give a shout out to our colleagues. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you to everyone.
Thank you.
We hope you'll join us next time.